Hello, and welcome to What Moves Us, the podcast where we ask, what moves us? Or more accurately, what's going to move us in future?
We look at debates, themes, and decisions of the minute that will impact on the way we get about in the future.
Hello, and welcome to another What Moves Us podcast. On the line today, we have Johanna, as usual. Hi, Johanna.
Hi, Liam. How are you?
I am very well. I'm excited to do an interview with our guest today, who is Antonio Ribeiro, CEO and founder of Yurtle, the newest Rail Innovation Group member.
Thank you very much for having us on. We're really happy and really nice to meet you, Joanna and Liam.
Hi, good to meet you.
You too. So we have lots and lots to talk about. But first of all, just for a bit of context, is whereabouts in the world are you today?
I'm in Northwest London, Kensal Rise, and I tend to work out of here most days. It's a sunny day, so really happy to be chatting to you guys.
Great. So I guess question number one is tell us about Yurtle.
Yes, so Yurtle is both a passion project, but also a very worthwhile project for all of society, we believe. Started 4.5 years ago as a product of my personal relationship with care. So I was a carer for my grandmother with vascular dementia. And that introduced a lot of challenges and difficulties when I was trying to balance work with caregiving. I now, as I was saying before, we got online. I'm a father of a 7-week-old girl. So I also have the perspective of a parent who's trying to balance work and care. And it's also a product, Yurtle is also a product of the kind of irrepressible trends that are challenging all but 5 East African countries, which is we have a rapidly aging society. We have more older people than younger people in society for the first time ever. And that's really exposing the cracks of social care, of our healthcare system, of our pension system, and something needs to be done about it. So we built Yurtle to support people who have these responsibilities of care and trying to juggle work and care.
So, what is it exactly then that Yurtle does then to balance those competing challenges on our time? You know, because I think also what's interesting about that is because we're also the first generation probably as well that have to balance sort of like looking after children as you do, and also our parents as well.
That's exactly right. So there's around 12 million caregivers in the UK, and 6.5 million of those are sandwich carers. So as you rightly say, somebody with an adult care responsibility, simultaneously also with a child care responsibility. So Yurtle is built a care cash plan, is what we call it. So Yurtle is an insurtech. We provide an insurance product as well as a technology product. So we work with employers who understand that they not only that they employ people with caregiving responsibilities, but also have empathy for the challenges that may create. And so we've created a solution that ultimately minimizes care-related absence in the workplace. So employers are happy because they have higher rates of productivity, fewer absences in the workplace, and employees are happy because when a childcare arrangement that they have breaks down, for example, a child is too ill to be accepted by the nursery for fear of contagion with the other kids in the nursery and teachers in the nursery, Yurtle will pay a cash allowance for the duration of that illness that can then be used with no strings attached, no need for any receipts, can be used to make that household make their day a little bit easier. So it might mean sticking grandma and granddad into a cab for last minute urgent babysitting whilst I crack on with my working day. And then alternatively, on the adult care side of things, but also relatedly, if you're a household that has come to depend on a domiciliary carer or domiciliary nurse of some sort, but that care arrangement breaks down, again, we provide a cash allowance that you can then distribute in a way that makes your life easier, either finding a professional alternative in our app to provide that continuity of care whilst you crack on with your day as uninterrupted as possible, or alternatively pay somebody in your social network and community. So it's a care cash allowance that provides both the funding and the alternative care arrangements when everything breaks down that would normally cause a disruption to the rest of your day, including a working day.
And of these tools, which ones were you, I guess, which ones inspired you? Did you wish existed when you had these issues?
I'll be honest with you. It was finding trusted alternative carers was a really difficult thing to do, and also then kind of hand in hand is once I found an alternative carer that my loved one trusts. So, for example, if somebody lives with dementia, they tend to be very untrusting of anybody they don't recognize. That can also be true for a parent, for example, who their most precious thing in life is their child. They don't want to be trusting a stranger with them. So finding the right person is a really important part of the product. But then equally, we understand that especially if it's frontline work, especially if people are living on a wage that isn't necessarily abundant, it's not just about finding an alternative care provider that you trust. It's also about how do I then go about affording them, and likely also how do I go about affording an emergency rate at the last minute when I need somebody to step in on my behalf. So it's both of those components, to be honest. It's help me find someone and then help me fund somebody as well.
Right. So I guess I'm just going to bring this I'm going to skip ahead in some of our questions and look to Johanna, who has experience in rail operations. In how much do you think that this could benefit giving out operational staff this reassurance in terms of missed shifts and things?
Yeah, well, so you've already touched on it just there. The kind of missed shifts is obviously a really clear line of argument that we are exploring. So we've seen or spoken with rail operators who have seen their absence rates go from say 1.5% all the way up to maybe 5.5%, 6%. And they've attributed part of this increase and this lack of trained crew availability, as an example, to people who have adult or childcare responsibilities. And whilst the individuals in question may not volunteer that information for fear of being, having their commitment questioned to their job and to their company, they've realized that actually it is parents who tend to be more absent. They've realized that it is a certain demographic, i.e., people between the ages of 55 and 65, who, by the way, obviously kind of starting to approach semi-retirement phase in their life, and who perhaps, if they had the kind of appropriate types of support, would have that retirement date perhaps pushed out a little bit longer. So in the rail context where there is a massive dearth of skilled talent and there's a real fear about the exodus of talent through the retirement door, it's a way to keep people in work a little bit longer because it becomes more viable to have my responsibilities of care for my spouse or for my elderly parents whilst I'm working, if I have this type of support. But then, as you mentioned, it's also minimizing those explicit costs as it relates to the loss of income because services are either delayed or they're not running at all, which sometimes could mean delay repay compensation kind of charges that might have been avoidable if there was the appropriate type of support for somebody who at the start of their day, when they wake up to a sick child who can't be dropped off at school or nursery, if they had a tangible financial support and also tangible alternative care support, they may have made it into work. And then just a final point. So it's trained crew availability to us makes a lot of sense. It's providing the right types of support for a multi-generational workforce, and particularly one that's very kind of heavily backloaded on the kind of aging side. But then equally also for us, it's understanding that when somebody is a caregiver and balancing care with work, they're more likely, we know, to have mental health challenges, either because of isolation or because of burnout, and also physical challenges because of the physical strain of caring for an adult in some cases. And so that can obviously kind of safety critical work and fatigue don't go hand in hand. And if people do have the right kind of support from their community and from a community of third-party vetted professionals, that can also address those challenges that I think are really prevalent in the space.
So I just kind of want to sort of like bring it alive a bit and maybe think about, sort of like from a personal point
Yeah.
of view. So if I'm, so I mean, like, it doesn't really matter whether it's male or female, but if I'm, a person in my 40s and I've got a couple of young children, one at school, one at nursery, and I've also got elderly parents, and I'm a frontline, railway worker, how do you support them? Sort of like, what are the costs involved? How do I sign up? What support do I get?
Yeah, so just to make clear from the outset that our product is normally accessed through by an employee through their employer. So you can either opt into our product and through a kind of a flexible benefit arrangement, or it may be something that your employer concludes is in their benefit to pay for on your behalf and made available to you for free. But tangibly, so if you're, just to take your example, if I'm a 40-year-old and I've got an adult dependents, perhaps some aging parents, and I've also got children. So what we've done as a company is we have started to unpack the really crazy statistic, which is that the highest driver of sickness absence is actually childcare breaking down. So what we've done is we've done the homework on, when I'm a parent, what is the main reason why I'm absent in the workplace as it relates to my childcare responsibilities? And when I'm an adult carer, what is that same logic? Why am I pulled away from work and into care? And so, taking the parental side of things first, the majority of reasons why somebody might pull a sickie, call in their manager and say that they can't make it into work today and for the next couple of days, is because you wake up to find that your child is vomiting, has got diarrhea, and a nursery or a school have a lawful right, according to 15 different illnesses, to exclude your child for a period of up to maybe 8 days if it's something like chickenpox or measles, and for 48 hours if it's vomiting and diarrhea. Now, if I wake up and either I get, I know straight away that my child won't be accepted into the nursery or into the school, or perhaps I get a call during the middle of the working day telling me that I need to pick up my child because he's been vomiting all over the carpet. I now have a solution, which is I now have cash that's made available to me, which is equivalent to the cost of backup care. And I also have an app where I can quickly source either a third party emergency babysitter or night nanny or whatever it may be. Or alternatively, I can use the app to coordinate with my sister, my brother, my cousin, or even with a domestic cleaner, where I can essentially arrange for the pickup of my child. And I can make whoever is executing that on my behalf, I can make their life easier by offering to pay for their lunch, paying for their taxi, or perhaps even, it's my child has been sick for a couple of days, and I now want to hire a domestic cleaner to get my house in order after my child has been vomiting all over my kind of my living room and my sofa. So tangibly, it's a cash for convenience that either helps me persuade my community, somebody in my community, a neighbor, to come and step in and help, or I can use that cash to find a babysitter in the Yurtle app as well. And then just to kind of round off on what that looks like tangibly for somebody who's got adult care responsibilities, we've realized that the main drivers of absence when I've got adult care responsibilities, absence from work, I should say, is I've come to rely on a nurse, a domiciliary care nurse for my father, my spouse, whoever it may be. But through illness, through whatever reason it may be, that nurse is made unavailable. And I now need to step in, or somebody in my family needs to step in and bridge that care. And so normally, again, my first instinct would be is to call and work and pretend like something's gone wrong with me. I eaten something off and I need to rush to Preston and tend to my dad. Equally, there's a payout by Yurtle when your father is discharged from the hospital, which again is something that normally somebody would have to drop everything and ensure that the reintegration of your father back into their home safely is something that's done by you. But in this case, you have the cash again to find either a domiciliary care professional, alternative to the one you've come to rely on, or again, it may be you can persuade your sister to miss a shift at Marks and Spencer's with the cash that you can pay her in order to support in that case. So hopefully that's clear. But it's tangible financial support and also care alternatives in that.
Yeah, no, that is. So the incentive then as for the employer, is then as part of their workplace benefits packages that they have, whether they're the ones that they offer as part of the overall package, or whether it's one that you can choose because of your circumstance. And that is really to reduce that workplace absence, and to support the employee in where they are in their life. And that obviously has quite considerable financial incentives, because workplace absence, can cost businesses quite a bit, and it's probably grown post-COVID as well.
Totally. So you're totally right. So that's the hard benefit. The hard tangible benefit is the reduction in absence, which, as you say, can ameliorate the loss of income and the possible penalties of services being disrupted for end customers of any given company. And what we then say is that there are also a variety of associated softer benefits. So 80% of the care that's given is given by women, right? So this is absolutely a gendered conversation where we've realized that actually when women go unsupported, multiple points in their career, they'll be tempted or forced into taking a career break, reducing their hours, changing their employer to somebody who is local, more local to their house or to their community. And all of this basically culminates in not just the gender pay gap that we know is stubborn, despite attempts to improve it, but also the gender pension gap. So if you take one 64-year-old man, one 64-year-old woman who are comparable, a woman will have £139,000 less in her pension pot than a man because of the career breaks. And it really makes perfect sense. It's, I'm working, I have a child, suddenly I realize that, one or two or three times in any given year, I'm having to disrupt my working flow and my working day. I start to get really self-conscious about what my colleagues think of me or what my line manager thinks of me. And I start to conclude that, okay, I really can't make this work. And not least if you actually consider that some women then get offered, say, a promotion, and 2 in 3 women will reject that promotion because they think, God, this responsibility at work with my responsibility at home is already tough enough. How am I going to be taking more responsibility at work? And all of that starts to really create this very negative spiral for women who are unable to, I think, ultimately actually pursue one of a very basic right that men have in the workplace that women don't, which is actually the right to take the job I want to at the price point that I feel I deserve. It's just not a right that's equally available between men and women. So it can be a massive retention tool. And
Yeah, no, I was just letting, sort of that settle in, because I'd never really thought of, those barriers to women in that way. The fact that it does, sort of like all those other care responsibilities, whilst consciously you're aware that you do take on a lot of that burden, you don't really think about the price that you pay for that. And I think that's this sounds like a really incredible tool to support families and women particularly, because I think since because one of the reasons why I mentioned COVID was that the Women in Rail report, shows that actually, whilst we're trying to get more women into rail, the female workforce has actually reduced in the last survey from 17 to 14%, I think. And I don't think it's fully understood why women are leaving, but this is
it's
one of the reasons.
really funny because I perhaps I've just grown a bit more cynical over time in this space, but I think it's kind of understood why women are leaving. But fundamentally, it's perceived to be too difficult a problem to solve, and so it just goes unsolved. That's my opinion of it. And I think, that one of the most depressing statistics at the time now is that it's something like 86% of women within 3 years of having a child will leave the workplace altogether. And it's just incredibly unjust. And I feel like it's something that somewhat mutually incompatible. The way the society has designed the workplace is somewhat mutually incompatible with having a child. But I think that we can do so much better as a society in providing workplaces that feel psychologically safe for somebody who has dependents to be able to say, sorry, is there a I guess, an adaptation that we can make to my role, to my career progression, that accounts for this current period, this current chapter that I'm going through in my life, without me having to make an incredibly tough decision of having to choose between family and work. People, by the way, always choose family naturally. Um, and then I think that it's a case of, okay, how can we really think deeply about what is tangibly blocking people from being able to participate in paid labor when they have dependents? And it really is, um, it's a financial thing, and it's also a can I find a trusted alternative thing.
And I guess, from a business point of view, we have to find the solution because of some of the challenges you said at the beginning about the aging population. And we know that we have a shortage, industry has a shortage of skilled staff. So we have to find solutions to support our employees, don't we? If we want to retain good employees and retain skills in our industry.
Well, I mean, the UK, for as long as I know, has been through a kind of a productivity rut. It's been stagnant in terms of its development in that regard. It's also now, like so many economies in the world, facing this demographic issue and time bomb that's actually exploded already, and the issues are now just starting to kind of rear their head and become clear to people. But yeah, absolutely, you've got a multi-generational workplace, and by the way, let it be clear that um, whilst caregiving is correlated with an increase in age, there's a lot of young people with caregiving responsibilities. And for example, if you take millennials who are now carrying the 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 weight of the economy on their shoulders, in the sense that they tend to be now the ones who have moved now into middle management, and they are plentiful in the workplace, unlike younger generations, older generations who have started to who aren't fully represented in the workplace. On average, it's been shown by Bupa that a millennial will take 6 days of sick leave per year to tend to a childcare emergency. And if you just think about all of the wastage there, it seems like it's a low hanging fruit and something can be done to improve it. And so I totally agree with you. It's more pressing than it's ever been to address this challenge.
So moving on to your experience in rail then, have you been having positive conversations with rail businesses?
We have been having really positive conversations with rural businesses, and kind of across dotted, different operators across the UK, all share a common concern around some of the themes that we've already touched on, which is the rapid rate of retiring skilled workers, primarily as it relates to train drivers, as well as then train driver trainers, um, but then equally other positions also. And where people have basically come to Yurtle to express this concern, having realized that their absence has ticked up, and they keep a close eye on the incidence rate of absence. Um, but then also starting through their own type of internal surveys and research, realizing that a lot of this is to do with care-related challenges. So that's been a great topic of conversation with them, and something that's brought people to us. But then equally, our conversations have also been around, there's been certain outliers in the industry, I think, who have really deliberately taken intentional steps to addressing the equality of opportunity imbalances between men and women in the workplace. And so I think there's been a real push, as far as we've been able to tell, of trying to attract women into the workplace and into jobs where perhaps um, they perhaps thought that structurally wasn't really set up to allow them to thrive. And so our conversations have been very positive, to the point where we've gotten on a couple of occasions now, and continuing the conversation to a board level type of discussion with how seriously are you trying to take this challenge of aging, of attracting women into the workplace, of the dangers of an overly fatigued staff member who perhaps with the right support doesn't need to be risking as much as they are on a safety critical job. Um, and so we're now going through the motions of finding the first couple of partners um, to take the jump and actually offer this tangible support to their staff.
So you say you're Liam, did you want to come in?
I was just going to say, has anything surprised you about your conversations with rail industry?
You know what? Actually, a really positive surprise has been that we obviously work with multiple industries, but we're really digging deep into rail because what's really been a great surprise to us is just how clearly people have become aware of the nature and the volume of absence in their workplaces. So no company in the world says, I want more absence as opposed to less absence. But what I've been really personally really amazed by is that you ask a rail operator what their rate of absence is, and they know to a really high degree of accuracy what their rate of absence is. And they've also got a lot of confidence as to how to diagnose that absence, which is something that I haven't really seen across any other industry. And perhaps it's because, absence is a nice to have metric in other industries, whereas in the rail space, I guess it means, absence means loss of income, means possible penalties for disrupted services. So it's that's been a really positive surprise I've seen.
Is it an ever evolving app, or have you built
It
it?
is. It is. It absolutely is. So only last week we created new functionality to take the claims making experience through the app to another level. We have an in-house tech team, so we don't have to move at a slower speed than what we would like. We're constantly sending out new versions of our app into the Apple Store as well as in Google Play, and so i.e. Android and iOS. So it absolutely is. I've got one of my colleagues who often cites and quotes the number of app updates that we've published since the app went live. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I know that it's basically in the hundreds. It's we're constantly evolving what we do. Um, and really, one of the things that Joanna mentioned before was that people perhaps are surprised when they realize the impact that care has on them. One of the key functionalities that our app has is actually helping play back based on the time that you spend in the locations of care that you mark in the app that are locations of care. So perhaps your child's school, the GP, the diabetes clinic, whatever it may be, the supermarket. We play back to individuals how long you spend in any given location of care in any given day, month, year, to allow us to then play back to you a trend which says, over the last 6 months, you've given 40% more care than you did in the 6 months prior to that. So why don't you look to support in our app in terms of resources, in terms of maybe a domestic cleaner here that you can find on the Yurtle app at a discount, legal support, whatever it may be. So it's very personalized to your personal experiences of care, how you feel about that care. And so our app is always evolving in becoming more and more personalized to the actual lived experience of any one given parent or carer.
I think that tracking sounds quite interesting so that you can see how much activity you spend on caring, because as we know, it costs quite a lot to society when people are being
Exactly.
taken away from other things. From an anonymized point of view, do you also track that data as well, so that you're saying amongst your users that we know that caregivers, spend this time, on, sort of like on emergency activity or something like that, and this is what
Yeah.
is costing the economy?
Yeah, that's right. So that when we get to the kind of scale where we can kind of publish really meaningful data that helps move policy, that's absolutely our intention. Always aggregated, always anonymized, always just, I guess, kind of broad level trend data. Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we would like to do, and critically actually playing back to people with their permission, obviously, even in the first place, to be able to like ascertain where are the locations of care, and then tracking the time you spend there. And the background is the power of the rest of the people in your care team, say your spouse, friends, whoever you've invited into your care team, being able to see the extent and the amount of care that you give is actually a subliminal message to say, perhaps I should lean in and support a bit more because, Johanna has been doing 10 hours of care in a week. I've not done anything this week. It's just a bit of subliminal messaging as well to help you get the support that you need without having to explicitly ask for it, which can be sometimes a bit awkward.
Because like, yeah, I mean, because I'm interested, sort of like you're saying about, geography and that there as well, because that from a policy point of view, that could be a really interesting, output that can help, sort of like governments make decisions and that, couldn't it?
Absolutely, yes, certainly, certainly. I mean, as we know, any the first step to any important decision is take a sober look at data, and see what it tells you. And you're totally right. That would be really, really powerful.
Within your business, are you asking people to continually think about challenges as well?
Yeah. Well, the reality is everybody that works at Yurtle has either been a carer, is a carer, or has spent 3 different sessions, or let's call them interviews, with carers as part of their interview to join Yurtle. So they've got a real deep empathy with our users. And so to that end, we think about things in outcomes, i.e., what is it that we're trying to enable for carers? What are the main challenges that they're facing? And so to that end, they're constantly challenged to think about what can we do better, because it comes from a place of understanding as opposed to, um, a position of disconnectedness with who we're actually solving for. So it really is an intrinsic motivation as well as an extrinsic, but an intrinsic motivation to understand what we can do better. And obviously being really aware of, as we are, of how people are using the app and how people are claiming and where they're finding issues and obstacles, allows us to continue to evolve our thinking and to challenge our thinking on, are we doing the right things for the employer? Are we doing the right things for the employee?
Coming to the end of our discussion, which has been absolutely fascinating, and your passion is very clear. I just wondered if you had any reflections back on, well, the rail or transport industry.
Yeah, I guess what I would ask for is courage to do something that feels unprecedented. So I think today, the extent to which carers and parents feel seen and supported in the rail industry is something that we'll look back in 5 years and say, "Oh, I can't believe that that was the level of attention that we paid to this massive societal shift that very tangibly impacts all of our workplaces." And so it's to take a courageous leap at a time where I know the costs of running a business have gone up because of national insurance contributions, because of minimum wage. Um, but it's to have a bit of courage, to really understand the size of the problem in your business, and then have courage to explore solutions and to have conversations with people, and to, I guess, in a some way unprecedented way, make people feel safe enough inside of your businesses to have a candid dialogue about how being a parent, how being a carer tangibly affects me at work, without feeling that my job is at risk in some way. So that would be my ask, I guess.
Good advice also to reflect on these things within the business. Well, that was absolutely fascinating. Lots to think about. Johanna is stunned into silence.
No, it's because it's just been so thought provoking. Oh, and like just sort of like just from a sort of like the statistics and policy point of view and some of those challenges and barriers and that, but also the possibility of the problem that you're solving. Yeah. And I guess to a certain extent my head is going around with all sorts of ideas and things. It has really been inspiring, and I just wish you every success, and hope that as you say that rail does have the courage to look in this, because it's something that really does need to be solved. It really has been brilliant to chat with you and to hear all about Yurtle. I have one last question, because we did miss it out right at the beginning. Why did you call your company Yurtle?
Yeah. Oh, good question. So basically, somebody in the team at some point suggested that a turtle would be a great mascot for us, because basically a turtle moves slow and steady, which is what we're trying to get parents and carers to do: move slow and steady so you don't burn out. A turtle lives, a sea turtle lives like 145 years. I think it's the longest living animal. And so we are obviously in the aging space, so it made sense in that case. But then also turtle's got a shell, so kind of emblematic of our insurance, which provides like a protective layer. And then the actual name Yurtle, believe it or not, comes from my first date with my wife when we were at university in our second year of university. We've been together for a long time now. She told me the story of how she wanted a dog, but her parents said, if you can keep this lizard, this bird, and these turtles alive, kind of in that order, then you can graduate onto a dog. And she named that turtle Yurty. And so I thought, you know what, we've got this turtle mascot, which makes sense, and I've got the name for it now.
It's a lovely story. And it's been lovely to meet you today.
Yeah, likewise. I really appreciate your guys' time.
Thanks for listening to another episode of What Moves Us. We hope we moved you. For more episodes, you'll definitely want to subscribe to our channel.
Until next time.